It was a record-setting January. MLS joins the global transfer market. And what did NASL prove with their lawsuit? That and much more on Friday's Morning Kickaround. Hello and welcome to the show. This is Morning Kickaround, where we cover the world's favorite game from the world's absolute favorite country, coming to you live Monday, Wednesday, Friday. I'm Robert Kerr. He's Jason Davis. Glad to be back with you on the show. Need to say thanks to my partner for holding the show down on Wednesday. It's been a tough week for old Rob.
Yeah, I'm glad you're back, Rob, and no worse for wear. I hear you're back to almost 100%. Yeah, except for taking a head to the cheek in your soccer match yesterday, you told me, your pickup game?
Yes, sadly, one of my favorite foods is probably off my eating list forever. The damage that can be done with just one scallop is pretty scary, to be honest. Yeah, I was pretty much half dead until yesterday. Was feeling good. I'd been in bed for about 3 days, so I was like, all right, I'll go to my pickup soccer game. About 10 minutes in, somebody much more athletic than me did a fast turn, and I took the back of his head right into my face. I don't think you can see it, but come Monday, I might have a big black eye, but couldn't be happier to be back with you and talking some footy. We got a great show today. MLS expert, coverage legend of Major League Soccer, David Gass, is joining us at the top of the hour. We're going to talk NASL lawsuit, U.S. Open Cup early rounds, and record-setting spending in January.
Yeah, it was a wild January in terms of spending, even though I don't know there was as many big, giant deals as people thought might happen. There are a couple of players that we imagined would move who didn't go anywhere. But then, Manchester City decided to drop, $250 million on players in January as they try to figure out their problems. And it is interesting to see MLS engage more with the world market, both with incoming players spending and with outgoing players.
Yeah, it's not an anomaly anymore. We'll get into that in just a second, but be sure to click the subscribe button. We are, above 700 and counting, on the way to 1,000 subscribers. So if you haven't done so already, click subscribe at Morning Kickaround YouTube channel. Follow us on social media at MKickaround on platforms such as X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And be like Mike. Go to our Ko-Fi page and give us a donation. Follow us and support at kofi.com/morningkickaround. Thank you for the donations. You can do a one-time thing or set up a monthly donation, whatever you would like to do. Anything is appreciated and will go a long way to expanding this thing we call Morning Kickaround. So you ready for some long ball action?
Yes, I'm always ready. Let's go.
All right, let's do it. Long ball number one here on Friday morning. According to FIFA data released this morning, or at least reported on this morning, more than $2 billion was spent in the January transfer window globally, breaking all sorts of records. So the little bit of a dip after COVID is long gone. What do you make of that? Not just domestically, internationally, across the globe, soccer teams spending money for players.
The transfer market go crazy. I mean, that is incredible. By the way, as I mentioned, Manchester City accounted for 10% of that spending. £179 million, $223 million. Yeah, Rob? What's
just 4 players?
For 4 players. For 4 players. Yeah. Omar Marmoush, Nico Gonzalez, Abdou Kodir, I'm going to get that out one day, Abdou Kodir Kusanov, and Vitor Reis during the January window. That was pretty incredible. Premier League total, 498.7 million pounds. So that right there is that's a quarter of the 2 billion, right? So, it is. It's interesting because January is normally a time when you're paying a premium for a player, right? In Europe, you're mid-season, and I know some of this money is not European spending. MLS did spend a little bit of money, not hundreds of millions of dollars, but more than 100 million, I think. And so there are teams that are sort of preseason looking to add pieces that will spend in January, and it kind of makes sense. But if you're a Premier League club, if you're a club in Germany, France, Spain, whatever, you're paying like a winter premium. It's like instead of like coming out of Christmas and everything's marked down because they're trying to get rid of inventory, it's the other way around. It's like everything gets marked up because supply and demand has flipped on its head as clubs get desperate. I wonder what the Manchester City premium was. They're paying a tax because their city, everybody knows they have crazy money. They are desperate now because of the dip that they've taken in terms of their fortunes. And it's like if you are selling more Marmouche, you go, hey, throw in an extra 20 or an extra 10 because you need him and we have him. And what are you going to do? Say no? I think that's part of this, right, Rob? And, again, so it's not just, by the way, this simple thing. And I don't want to dig too deep into this because it's very depressing. Okay. But it's not just that simple thing of team A needs player A and they call team B and they ask how much and the team says, oh, it's 50, and then they pay it and everybody goes about their way and the player makes the move. Sometimes players get moved around because of the books, right? Because, and especially in an era of PSR and some of the financial controls that are in place, sometimes this is, I don't know if I want to call it money laundering so much as I want to call it creative accounting gets done because players are moved in January, Robert.
Yeah. There's definitely there's always been an element of the laundering-ish sort of an influence on these things. And then obviously Americans are very familiar with having to move players because of caps and certain regulations and stuff like that. But to your point of paying premiums in January and teams obviously willingly doing so with so much spending in January is buying your wife a present on January 18th. Like the price is never going to be more of a premium than that weekend before Christmas. That is just like prime. You're desperate. You need this gift. You've waited too long. You're in a pickle. You need to buy it now. So you are going to pay that price.
Yeah, right.
And not only was there, obviously those huge budget transfers, those 4 transfers from City you're talking about, that was 10% of the world's spend. But just there was also just a vast amount of them. According to this FIFA data, 5,863 transfers in total, a rise of 19% from January 2024. So that's just an incredible amount of human beings transferring across the planet. It speaks to just the global nature of it, and it's interesting that MLS is now joining that kind of global ecosystem. Another note, there's also a breakdown in this data, which I thought was interesting, is which countries had the most incoming and outgoing. And this probably hasn't been true, but Brazil had 471 players come in. And in my mind, Brazil is, a seller. They produce talent and then they sell. Like, right. Unless those were all, South American players coming in, but that's a huge number.
Yeah, well, let's keep in mind that transfers can be inside the league as well. I mean, a team, Palmeiras selling a player to Santos or whatever counts as a transfer, even if that player is not, moving from outside the league into the league.
Fair.
I don't know how many of those 471 players moved within Brazil, but I imagine it's a significant number. What's interesting here, if you want to get real weird about this, and we could throw an American soccer is weird kind of on top of this Sunday here, or whatever this is, the 188 outgoing transfers, Major League Soccer had, the United States, it doesn't say Major League Soccer, it says the United States had 188 outgoing transfers. I don't have their incoming number. But if a player in Major League Soccer transfers within Major League Soccer, and we're going to talk to David Gass about the cash for trades market, and there's obviously trades that happen with, GAM and all that stuff. I don't believe that hits this number because Major League Soccer is single entity and the ITC doesn't actually change legal hands per FIFA's system. Does that spin you around a little bit, Robert? Twist your brain into a pretzel? Inside Major League Soccer transfers don't count as transfers in the traditional sense because the ITC is not leaving the entity that already held it, I think is how that works.
Yeah, I mean, that is interesting. You're just moving branches within the company. It's not from one entity to another. So that makes sense.
What do all the people say that are very against the way MLS operates? That it's a franchise model, and you're basically these are McDonald's or these are KFCs, and you're just getting moved from a KFC in one city to a KFC in another. But obviously with the numbers here, it's pretty clear things have changed. You mentioned, so it's $2.35 billion that was spent, up 57.9% over last year and 47% over January 2023, which is when the previous record was set. So 47, almost a 50% increase over the previous spending record. How much of this? So City went nuts with their spending. 10% is just Manchester City on 4 players. But remember, Saudi Arabia has really started to impact the market. Now, they weren't one of the biggest spenders. Saudi Arabia was behind the Premier League, Germany, Italy, and France, with spending of $202.1 million. And we know that 79.9 of that was just John Duran, which is 64 million pounds if you care about it that way. I just, obviously that is a new player in the market that is willing to spend significant money that just adds to the numbers, right? You traditionally had big spenders in 1 or 2 leagues generally in January. German clubs don't spend 50 million per player as a general rule. They might spend 10 here and 10 there and 10 and 15 and those kind of things. Same for Spanish clubs outside of Real Madrid, who I don't think bought anybody. Real Madrid didn't make any moves in January, right? So, the big spenders outside of the Premier League really didn't do a lot here, and yet it's because of Saudi Arabia. They they do change the market, and if you're selling players, again, a la John Duran going from Aston Villa to Saudi Arabia, and you have somebody else who's outside of the traditional powerhouses that's willing to spend 80 million pounds on him, that definitely going to add to the numbers.
Interesting that former Chicago Fire John Duran, number 1 most expensive transfer of the window. So not often do you see record-breaking global transfer have a little bit of a MLS sidebar there. Moving on to long ball number 2 here for Friday. Top 3 games to watch for Americans abroad. It is kind of a different weekend with quite a bit of domestic cup action. So I want to press you a little bit here, Jason.
Yeah.
What are, if we were to pick 3 games to peruse and kind of lock in on, let's ask for your top 3. What would be your absolute number 1 game if you're going to kind of clear your weekend schedule? You're running errands, doing stuff with your kids and your family and all that. Where are you clearing your schedule for this week?
That's the wrong framing. I'm sorry to do this to you, Rob, but that's the wrong way to think about it. You're setting me up. There's no game that exists that's going to get me to clear my schedule. That doesn't exist. But what I'll say is there's intrigue, there's possibility. And what I would do is say, what's the game I have to check in on to see if I need to then make a decision about sitting down to watch it in the moment. And maybe it's so because of when lineups come out, maybe it's an hour before the game that I make my choice. And if it doesn't go my way, then I can always come back around. Second half, I'll watch it. Unless it's just that interesting. And number 1 on the list is going to be Dortmund and Stuttgart, because we've got an American player who desperately needs more minutes, who desperately needs more time on the field, who I think has shown his capabilities enough to imagine that a new manager with a fresh start, fresh set of eyes, might look at him and say, all right, kid, you're in. Do this for me. Borussia Dortmund has signed Niko Kovac as their new manager. He debuts against Stuttgart. Will Giovanni Reina play? And like I said, I'm going to be checking my FOTMob an hour before the game to see if Gio Reyna is in the starting lineup for Borussia Dortmund against Stuttgart. If he's not, I'm not going to sit down and watch that game, at least not the first half, because the chances of Gio being on the field in the first half are very, very small. But maybe I'm like, oh, it's going to be the second half of Dortmund and Stuttgart. What's the scoreline? Oh, okay, maybe I'll check in on that to see if Nico gives Gio some time. Now, the thing is, though, Rob, I will still be angry if Gio Reyna plays but doesn't come on until the second half as a substitute, because we've already been doing that. I'm over that already. Like, can we Gio needs to be in the starting lineup. And I know that I'm not considering the Dortmund side of things, and is that the right choice? And, if you play Julian Brandt, can you play Gio Reyna and all that? But Niko Kovac has an opportunity to do the right thing by the talented American player who has, again, shown himself capable of stepping up in these big moments. Come on, Nico, do that thing for me. That's number one.
Yeah, definitely. Last time I was on the show, said I'm desperate to see more Gio Reyna. He got everyone excited with his back heel assist in the game a week or so ago. We need to see more of that week in, week out. We want to be able to almost assume that he's in that starting lineup, right? And that game, Dortmund, Stuttgart, 9:30 tomorrow morning. Game number 2. Which one are you checking in on?
Yeah, so the season has not gone the way Milan wants it to go in terms of the league. They sit in 8th place. They're on 35 points. They are now back of Bologna, obviously Juventus, who's trying themselves to get into the top 4 to make it back to the Champions League. That is distressing, if only because we want to see our Milan Americans in the Champions League next year. I mean, they still have an opportunity in this campaign. They have a new manager, relatively new, less than a month on the job, I think, in Sergio Conceição, who I think has brought a little bit of a new energy to the club. There are still a lot of questions. Will we see Santi Jimenez really make a difference after his signing in January? He was one of the moves that Milan made. We obviously know Kyle Walker is there now. But, of course, this is about the Americans. So Christian Pulisic, Yunus Musa, away to Empoli in the league. And Empoli is by no means one of the big hitters in Serie A. 16th place, right now. They're back of Como. I mean, Como is the land of misfit toys. So, to have them go to Empoli, it has to be a victory. And if we're talking about, again, our Americans, we want to see Pulisic, who I expect to start, and Yunus Musa, who, had the difficult moment in the Champions League, Rob. Remember, he picked up 2 yellow cards, got sent off against, Zagreb, came back, had a pretty good showing in the league, in the Milan derby, which Milan, I don't think Conceição handled that all that well. I think he made a mistake with going too aggressive with his tactics in the tail end of that match, which allowed Inter Milan to find the equalizer. So they want to bounce back. They need full points against a 16th place team. Let's see if Christian Pulisic can add to his goal total, his assist total, carry the squad, and hope that Yunus Musa gets to start as well.
Interesting. What do you think that João Felix kind of adds to the mix there? Was it really offense that they needed? Because they score plenty of goals. They just don't seem to be able to consistently keep any clean sheets or anything like that.
Plenty of goals is maybe stretching it a little bit. 33 goals in 22 games. And that's a decent return. But, you look at...
It's not free scoring by any means.
Napoli's doing it a different way. I mean, Napoli has given up 16 goals in 23 games. That's why they're in first place right now, 3 points up on Inter, right, in Serie A. But even Napoli has scored more goals than Milan has, which if that team, if Antonio Conte's team, which is mostly about running you into the ground and keeping you off the board, has more goals than Milan does have a goal-scoring issue. They had an issue at the center forward position. It's why they dumped Alvaro Morata and brought in Santi Jimenez. So they did need attack. They did need goal-scoring. Is João Felix going to be an X-factor for Milan? I'm not sure I saw enough at Chelsea. He's a talented player, but consistency was always an issue. Obviously, at Chelsea, Maresca thought of him as a League Cup all-star and a Conference League all-star. He wasn't even getting real minutes in the Premier League. So I don't know that I have a whole lot of expectations for João Felix. He has to prove something. It could be a change of scenery and everything goes well for him. So maybe that makes a difference. I I don't know, but they've given up 24 goals in 22 games. That's a reasonable return, right? That's a pretty good defensive record. It's the goal scoring and the inability to put games away, and like I mentioned against Inter Milan, that has affected Milan's ability to be in the conversation as a Champions League top club. They do not want to be in 8th place.
So, third of our top 3 of games to check out with American involvement abroad. And to be fair, we had to kind of scour the schedule to see which one, because there's domestic cup action. The Americans might not be playing in the UK. So we kind of had to hammer down and really look for something. And part of like following Americans abroad, you sometimes cast your eye on teams you might not necessarily otherwise take in. And game number 3 might be an example of just that.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to Germany. Again, it's a stretch, right? There's not you could talk about Juve, who plays today, by the way. So if you want to watch and see if Weston McKennie gets a start, if Timothy Weah is in the lineup, look for Juve against Como today. But I could do that. I mean, Juve is obviously another club in Serie A trying to make their way back into the Champions League picture and not having the season that they've wanted. But I'm going to turn us to Germany and I'm going to go to the bottom end of the table. I'm going to go way down the bottom end of the Bundesliga, and I'm going to highlight Holstein Kiel playing Bochum. That is 17 versus 18 in Germany, Robert. And you might think, why, Jason, would you bring up Holstein Kiel and Bochum? Well, it's because Holstein Kiel has just added an American player. Mm-hmm. John Tolkien, formerly of the New York Red Bulls, has gotten his European transfer. Yes, he's landed at a bottom feeder in Germany. Yes, he's landed at a club that is staring down the barrel of relegation. But maybe he can help them. He did play last week. He did get a start. They play 5 at the back. It seems to be the right kind of role for John Tolkien. 93 minutes, 5.84 rating over on FotMob. He didn't do a lot in that game, but it was his debut. I'm hopeful that we see John Tolkien grow into himself in Germany. So I'm picking that one. I'm picking a game at the bottom end of the Bundesliga too.
That could be a huge one in the long run to see if John Tolkien remains a Bundesliga player or if he gets pushed down, because that is the last 2 places in Germany. And catching up on his debut, he had trial by fire. He played Bayern Munich in his Bundesliga debut, so he had the stiffest test right off the bat. And we've sometimes, scratched our head when attacking players go to bottom feeders. If this team is defending, will they, get to score any goals if they're, backs to the wall? But with him being a fullback, he is going to get plenty of practice at his defensive trade playing for Holstein Kiel.
Right. We want him to improve as a defender. Clearly, that would be good for his potential with the U.S. men's national team. But he's also got that wicked left foot. So, there are things he can do with the attacking part of the game. And again, against Bochum, he should have an opportunity to do more of that. Like you said, against Bayern Munich, not so much. Against Bochum, come on, John, let's see what you got. Show us that New York Red Bulls or that New York Spirit or whatever, Jersey side. I don't know. Where's he from? Where's John Tolkien from specifically? Because he could be New York, it could be New Jersey, and I don't want to get them mixed up.
He's American. That's all that matters.
That's it. That's right. He bleeds red, white, and blue, Robert. That's all we need to know.
In Holstein Kiel, they fought back and made it a close game, 4-3 at the end of that last weekend. But long ball number 3, moving along, like we said, it is a domestic cup weekend. So we thought we'd focus our attention on the American domestic cup action. The U.S. Open Cup early round schedule has been released. I always love this kind of release because we get to see all the kind of lower league teams get in the mix, get their kind of moment of in the sunshine, really. We kind of get to see what's going on in the lower leagues, of course. The MLS teams don't join in until the 3rd and 4th rounds. But let's take a look on screen at some of the matchups we have here. Looks like we're going to be kicking off in March.
Yeah, we got games coming up March 18th, Tuesday. I think there's Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday that week in this first round. Some of these teams you're going to know and recognize. Hartford Athletic, USL Championship Club. They go New York Shockers. What a great name that is, the New York Shockers. I'm not going to throw up the hand signal. Sarasota Paradise, Naples, Miami FC, obviously of the USL Championship as well. I think that's the Miami FC.
Sure is.
Should they be sending a complaint to U.S. Soccer to make them change the website? I don't know that that's going to fly with the people down there in Miami. Chattanooga Red Wolves, FC Motown. That's everybody should know that club out of New Jersey. They've done some stuff and made some waves. Westchester, they play Westchester in Montclair, New Jersey. This is the purity of the U.S. Open Cup. This is the romance. This is the magic. I think Texoma is a new club in USL League One, so this might be their debut in the U.S. Open Cup. They're playing 4-0 SC, and I've done some work with the UPSL, making some videos talking about their playoff season when they get down to UPSL clubs all over the country. And 4-0 is a club that's done very well and made the finals in years past and things like that. So look out for that one. That could be, an opportunity for a amateur pro upset. Even if you don't know much about Texoma, they are a pro team. That could be an opportunity there. Tulsa Athletic versus FC Tulsa. So UPSL versus USL Championship in a local rivalry. That could be very, very fun. So that was, again, that's Tuesday, March 18th.
I want to hold you up there. I just want to point out that because, part of the, amending the Open Cup formatting was they changed the calendar a couple of years ago, if you don't remember, to kind of placate to the MLS schedule. And a lot of the amateur teams that used to participate don't really get to, because many amateur teams don't have their team together. It's mostly college guys and stuff like that. They only have the regular teams together in March. So it's interesting to see that there is a handful of amateur teams able to, field a squad against pro teams here with the new, schedule.
Yeah. That's the thing. Like, when you don't know a lot about these teams, you might not know how difficult it is for them to put teams together to play in this competition. And so, but look, those rosters turn over every year anyway because they're college kids. But then it becomes, the kind of college kids we could normally bring in aren't going to be available, as you said. So now we're looking at, are you bringing in some guys that, maybe a little bit older, guys that are semi-pro? Is this a situation where instead of being college-focused short-season clubs in the Open Cup, they are bringing – and remember, Des Moines Menace, a USL League Two club, right down there. They're playing Sporting Kansas City 2 in Kansas City at Swope Soccer Village. That was the club that Sasha Kleshtin and friends joined up with last year. So, I haven't heard anything on that front. I don't know if Sasha's coming out again. Maybe somebody else has gotten word and can tell us in the chat or let us know in the comments if Sasha, and I think it was it Roger Espinoza? I'm trying to remember who else he pulled in to play for the Des Moines Menace. But they that could be a thing again this year. We might see some guys sort of come out of retirement, so to speak, and throw their hat in the ring to play for one of these amateur sides if they just want to participate and be part of the Open Cup. Let's see. Columbus Crew 2, New York Renegades, another UPSL club that's had some good success. Chattanooga Football Club, which is that Chattanooga FC? We were playing in NISA, and I believe, I don't know where we are with NISA. NISA has collapsed. NISA's gone. NISA's had their sanctioning revoked, but their clubs are still involved, I guess.
Chattanooga is a MLS Next Pro team now.
Oh, that's what that NP means. That means Next Pro. So we're not putting MLS in there. We're just putting Next Pro, right? Sporting Kansas City 2. That's true. They must have switched over. Richmond Kickers, famously the last outside of Sacramento, before Sacramento, right? The last non-MLS team to make a final was the Richmond Kickers. Let's see. They just went through a rebrand. We may have to do a rebrand review for clubs like Richmond. I don't know how I feel about it, Rob. Anyway, it's obviously a long list because it's the first round. Very, very cool to kind of learn about the teams. Like, I would encourage people who don't know a lot about these clubs to learn about them. Different varying leagues. Portland Hearts of Pine, for example, made waves with their first ever kit and their badge. They've got really cool stuff going on up there. Some of these teams are representing MLS clubs or are connected to MLS clubs like Tacoma Defiance out of Washington, which is the next pro team for Seattle. I'll also point out Soda City FC, again, because I've done some things with the UPSL rather. I know a little bit about these clubs. They went back-to-back as national champions in the UPSL, Soda City. That's never been done before. That's also, they're a high amateur club, some college kids, but a lot of guys that are just playing for the love of the game. And I think that's a great story. So there you go. U.S. Open Cup first round.
Be sure to check out thecup.us for independent coverage. They have great articles, and they have this schedule over there. Great to see some Flint City Bucks bashing in the chat, too. Always love that. And thanks for tuning in to Long Balls and Morning Kickaround. If you haven't done so, click the subscribe button. We are on our way to 1,000 subscribers and be the next to do so. Follow us along on social media at mkickaround on X, Instagram, and Blue Sky. And if you're able to do so, share and donate to the show, ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. We're going to catch our breath and come right back with a very special guest for the big question here on Morning Kickaround.
We don't have big question. So, Jenny, just go ahead and click Hot Topic instead.
All right, Friday's hot topic here on Morning Kickaround. Which MLS teams have had the best roster rebuild so far? And to discuss this, we're pleased and happy to be joined by a staple of MLS coverage over a decade on Extra Time Radio, and now involved in a various new projects. Very excited to welcome Soccer's own David Gass. Thank you for joining us this morning on Morning Kickaround, sir.
Hi, Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Go ahead, David. Sorry.
No, nothing. Thanks for having me.
Nothing. Oh, nothing. No, we want to get into it. I just wanted to mention Soccer Wise, obviously, because incredible stuff that David and Tom Bogert are doing at Soccer Wise to cover the league. And, we talked obviously about the end of Extra Time and, your connections to Extra Time. I'm sure you have feelings about that. We don't have to get into them, but it's great that you guys are filling that void with Soccer Wise. So I wanted to say, as a soccer fan in America, as an MLS fan, thank you for that.
Oh, I appreciate it. Also, shout out to Jordan Angeli. We do a lot of NWSL coverage as well. So we're covering the two leagues hand in hand, which, top divisions in the country. So very excited about it. Appreciate it. And thanks to everyone who's tuned in so far.
Yeah, Jordan's great.
Yeah, just from kind of a zoomed out view, how have you felt moving into the independent coverage world compared to kind of like league specific work?
I've always been a freelancer, so I was never an employee at Major League Soccer. So I've always been across all different coverage. And this is, third or fourth podcast that I've tried to start. So I think we've all been there, and they come and they go like butterflies. And so
only three or four.
Yeah. A lot of broadcasting work for me. So covering, USL and CONCACAF games and NWSL and whatever else I can get my hands on. I think all of us sort of cobble everything together. So it's been interesting. It's been fun. I think, I think a lot of fans are looking for more coverage and more content around the teams that they love and the things they're passionate about. And so I hope we can be a platform for that. And I know for me, it's just been really exciting to sort of help build some community. I think there's been, of course, over time, and the pandemic doesn't help, and Twitter falling apart, which was such a key part of the American soccer experience, doesn't help. And so for us, we've tried to build things like our Discord community and all of that, just to have people be able to talk about the things they love and are passionate about. So it's been really fun so far. And it's a grind, as I'm sure you both know, just putting everything together and putting Band-Aids over things as the plane is in the air. But I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, go ahead, Robert. Sorry.
I was just going to get into it because there's so much going on with the transfer, and there's new rules and new ways to get players. And it really seems that MLS has joined the world transfer ecosystem with so many ins and outs. But just, big question or the hot topic, rather, which team would you say, off the cuff? I know Atlanta's, made headlines with the record spend and whatnot, but who do you think has had the best offseason so far?
I think that's one of those where it's like some teams, you make the right move and it feels big. Atlanta's the obvious one of they've been able to sort of wholesale change a lot. And to bring back a legend is such a big deal. To bring back a legend in a place where he could still be competitive. We've seen Carlos Vela come back. We've seen Joseph Martinez move around Major League Soccer. We've seen even like Alejandro Bedoya re-signing with Philadelphia. It's great. But the idea is Miguel Almiron could be the best player in Major League Soccer that's not named Lionel Messi this season. And that's very rare. It's one of those things where as the league grows, I think we'll see more of. My hope is it'll become homegrown players, right? American and Canadian players going overseas, playing at high levels, and then coming back to finish their careers. But Miguel Almiron is kind of a weird trailblazer in all of this. And so I can feel the excitement from Atlanta fans. I think it's well-deserved. It's one of the special soccer markets. So they've had a big one. Charlotte has been really entertaining as well. I just recorded a season preview with Seth McComer, who works for the Blazing Musket up in New England, which is one of the best, I think, covering soccer in North America. 14 moves. So they had 13 returning players, and they made 14 moves in this offseason. I think you'd call that a rebuild.
Yeah, there's a couple of teams that look like they're kind of in rebuild, reboot, something. I mean, Dallas stands out for me.
Chicago.
If you have a handle, obviously Chicago with Berhalter stepping in. I put this shirt on today for a specific reason, because I do think, you can look at the big money moves, both outgoing and incoming in a place like Atlanta, Austin, and what they've done. But I put on the Quake shirts today because if you're really an MLS sicko, you're looking to see what Bruce can do, and you're watching him, get his guys in, and even Joseph Martinez has not played for Bruce Arena, but does that not feel like the kind of move that Bruce is going to turn into something interesting? I don't know that they're going to win the West or anything, David, but they certainly could be a factor in terms of the playoff race.
Yeah, Bruce is good at MLS. That's like his expertise. He's good at Major League Soccer. Whatever that means, whatever formula and concoction you have to put together to win in that, he's done it before. He's comfortable doing it. He feels confidence in what he does. I think he trusts what he's seen in the league before. That's where you get the Joseph Martinez stuff. I also think he has a belief in coaching personalities maybe that other people would struggle with. So he sees Joseph and says, if I can unleash him in the right direction, I can get the best out of him, where other teams look and they're scared to bring him in and have it blow up inside their locker room.
Yeah, and Chicho Arango is kind of the same story, younger and more in his prime, but there's some baggage there. We know that.
Yep. All of these pieces really do, whether it's on-field question marks, the Mark Anthony Kays who have sort of dropped down their level, or Dave Romney. He got a huge contract in New England. Is he up to that contract? Those are the on-field ones, and then the off-field ones. But Bruce has done this before. He's very good at it. I think you talk about in American soccer circles, there are very few coaches who can sort of come into a locker room and tell a young player or a struggling player, like, oh, I believe in you, so it's good enough. And then they're going to believe them. And Bruce is one of them. So I think there's reason to have a ton of confidence. I think at a minimum, we're talking a better team than last year, which makes life harder for other teams in the West. But I think there's a reason to believe that they could have a pretty quick turnaround here.
Inter Miami, of course, with Messi there, there's always going to be a lot of attention. We've kind of touched it on the show with, Mascherano coming on board as the coach, and the president changing to someone very, very close to Messi as well. Do you foresee these being, Messi getting more comfortable and them going from strength to strength? Or is it too much Messi and not enough experience in the coaching side, and maybe things kind of get fractious?
It seems based off last year that if Messi's there, it's enough to keep the whole thing afloat. Like, it was chaos last year. Tata Martino quit like a day after the season ended. That's one of the biggest coaches in the history of the world, but especially in this region. And he was like, I can't handle this. I'm out the door. And yet they set the points record. So I think the issues that are being created are probably fractures in the foundation that will fall apart when Messi leaves and when all of this sort of ends, because no one's really going to be looking long-term and building out the club. But I think while the talent is there, it's probably too good to fall apart. You had the Club World Cup in, you had CONCACAF Champions Cup in. Yeah, maybe they don't win Supporters Shield, but I would be surprised if we're not talking about them legitimately, not just because they're the only team half people have heard of, but legitimately talking about them as an MLS Cup contender as we get to that point of the season.
Could this be like a Denver Broncos with Peyton Manning sort of year? Like, this is the year, like, because after this, it could be bleak for a while.
Yeah, I think that's what they've built towards. And one of the new rules that came out yesterday is them and the Seattle Sounders, it turns out, are allowed to pull money forward from the next 2 years as long as they pay it back in 2 years. So that's literally mortgaging your future. to win now. And I think Inter Miami's fine with that. They've grown at a massive level. I just moved to Miami myself, and like, they're legitimately everywhere. I would argue I see more Inter Miami gear on people, on cars, on houses than I do any other sports team in this city. So they've done that. They've won, and they've grown internationally. I think they'll take all of that for the down year or two. It's a league of parity. There's a salary cap. It doesn't have to last too long if they don't want it to. But I think they would take all of that for what you said, which is that big 1 year that they can sort of hang up in the rafters and say, like, that's who we are.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I traveled internationally this summer. I go to Puerto Rico all the time because my wife is from there. There are Inter Miami and Messi shirts everywhere, even in non-soccer places.
Michigan, too.
It's a thing. I'm going to steal Rob's turf a little bit here. I'm going to encroach. He mentioned Chicago. Obviously, Berhalter gets hired in Chicago. There are lots of people in American soccer fans who have hard feelings towards Greg Berhalter, but this seems like a very smart move for Chicago. And the Neymar nonsense aside, what do you make of the build that they're trying to do for a team that I desperately, despite not being a Chicago guy, want to be relevant in Major League Soccer?
I think he's gone about it the right way. He hasn't tried to cut the entire roster apart and rebuild things. I think he looked at it and said, if I'm a better coach than other people and I put together a better roster, like, there's some pieces here that I can work with. And so I think that's all positive. And then they've gone out and they've made some fairly large signings, bringing in Jonathan Bamba, and they already have Hugo Kuipers, who was, Belgian Golden Boot winner 2 years ago. And so I think he's put together a strong team. I think he's put together a team where then there's still the ability to grow on top of it after you've proved that you can be competitive, and maybe you see what you need. And people can say what they want about Greg Berhalter. I don't know how many times you've had the chance to interview him. He's one of the smartest soccer minds I've ever been around. There were times with the U.S. national team that I was frustrated by what I was seeing. There was also times where I was impressed. And the reality of it is he built the program back up, and he was uber competitive with Columbus, a team that was run off the back of a napkin. He got them to an MLS Cup. He got them to multiple Eastern Conference finals. And he did so mainly with his soccer tactics and him operating as the scout and operating as the coach in a really small club. So now he comes into maybe the most well-funded project in Major League Soccer, an owner who has been absolutely willing to spend. He's just done it poorly because of the guidance under him. And he gets an opportunity to sort of dig in on what he wants to do and what he wants to be best at. And I think we've all heard from him over the last few years. He wants to coach national team coaches. Some people want to be a national team coach, right? They want to run around. They want to do the political game. They want to fly in to see players play in Europe and then do their 3 camps a year. It never really felt like him. And so I think he's now coming back into a comfort zone. And I would say at the media marketing tour, he came back out on the press conference stage and he was asked questions about the national team. I thought he handled them well. But overall, I think you saw lightness to him. Like, this is the thing that's fun for him, and now he gets to do that.
Yeah.
Morning Kickaround is an interactive show, so we want to pull a question from the chat here. Luke asks, David, any insight in how much of a long-term concern there is about the drama in Cincinnati?
I would say it won't, the follow-up there, will it bleed into the season and further? I don't think it'll bleed further. To have your star player say the GM who turned us from the worst team in franchise history to a Supporters Shield winning team in a year and a half is the worst GM in the league probably isn't based in reality. It seems slightly personal. And so I don't think other people really feel that. And now Yuya Kubo hasn't come in and Luca Oriano. A lot of that stuff is tough, but MLS isn't built for winners. Like, it is built to pull winning teams down. And so if you are part of a winning team, you have to look around and say, you can't keep all the pieces. The LA Galaxy won MLS Cup and then traded their starting center forward. They've lost Ricky Puig for the year. They traded Jalen Neal. It's just the way the league, unfortunately, is built right now. And so you have a situation where you can't keep everyone. And you also have won on a lot of gambles. A lot of lotto tickets have hit. Those are lotto tickets for the players as well as the team. Santi Arias and Alvaro Barreal outperform their contract and get a better contract somewhere else. That's great for everyone. Turns out it wasn't great for Lucho Acosta because he was still stuck there, although he got a better contract as well out of all of it. I would be surprised if it carries over. I think the one thing this team has shown is both willingness to spend. They broke the transfer record again this offseason, and an ability to flip from one issue to the next. And so every time they've lost a big piece and we've been so panicked, how are they going to replace this? They've had the next player lined up, and it seems like they potentially can do that again.
Yeah, I just want to throw in the context because I think we're all kind of assuming everybody knows that Lucho Acosta went public with criticisms of Albright and said it was, that he was the worst in the league and bad. What was it? The working environment was bad. So just in case anybody's not up on the drama in Cincinnati, that's one of the elements. All right, Rob, what else we got?
All right, kind of to cap off our time with you, David, got a bit of a quick fire game for you here on Morning Kick Around. I kind of want a one-word synopsis of who's had the best roster rebuild so far. So we're calling this game Better, Worse, or Meh for roster rebuild. So
are we doing 30 teams? That's what I got, or 29. I guess San Diego's new. You can't really put them in this category. But are we doing all the teams?
No. I did think of that. Thankfully, I did do enough prep to not put 30 teams. So I picked out 6 teams from both conferences. Is that fair?
Okay. All right, let's go. Yeah, let's
all right, we'll start in the East. Better, worse, or meh? Charlotte.
Better.
Chicago.
Better.
Columbus.
Meh.
Cincinnati.
Meh.
Miami.
I don't know what Miami is. They're not a soccer team. I don't try to pretend that I have any idea. So I'll say better.
Okay.
And last one on the East, New York Red Bulls.
Better.
Okay. Finalist and better.
Yeah.
Going West, Dallas.
Worse. From a bad team.
They were bad and they're worse now.
Yeah.
They've
From worse
punted.
to
I don't know
worse.
what this is. Dallas could be a whole show. We don't have time, but go ahead.
Well, this is part of the problem of like someone walks to you and says, we'll give you $12 million for your $6 million asset. You can't say no.
Right.
But then you're stuck. And I think Dallas is kind of stuck right now, and we'll see how they get out of it.
Houston.
Worse.
Kansas City.
Better.
Obviously.
Seattle.
Better.
LAFC.
Better.
Ooh, okay.
And MLS Cup champs, LA Galaxy to round it off.
Worse.
Yeah.
But not bad.
Forced into worse and trying to control how worse it gets,
Yeah.
right, David? Is that the fair way to look at it?
Yeah, I did our season preview with Josh Gessman, corner of the Galaxy, who does a great job. And what we kind of came to on the moves they've made so far is they're the right moves to build a dynasty across 5 years. They're not the right moves to win a repeat championship. And listen, Ricky Puig getting injured is like this unprecedented thing. How are you going to have your MVP not play the whole year, but he's still on your roster because you kind of want him to stay engaged and involved, and like he sort of deserves it. So you're not going to put him on the season-ending injury list. But I will say, Christian Ramirez is going to score double-digit goals. So like you said, I think they've mitigated a lot of the dangers well while still keeping themselves competitive long-term.
All right, there you go.
David, thank you so much for sharing with us, and thanks for playing Better, Worse, or Meh here on Morning Kick Around. I got one more real quick, very, very serious question. I saw on your socials that you're a hummus enthusiast.
Yes.
Where do you land on red pepper hummus?
Anything else in hummus is not, it's haram. It's not allowed. You're not allowed to put extra stuff in hummus. Don't talk to me about chocolate hummus or whatever that is.
No.
No. So yeah, I would say I'm an anti.
Okay.
Thank you so much again for joining us. Please let our audience know where to find your great work.
Yeah, so soccer-wise, we are on, similar to this, live on YouTube 3 days a week. We cover MLS Tuesdays and Thursdays. We cover NWSL Fridays live, and then we've got extra shows on Mondays and Fridays that we put out with interviews. We've got our season previews for MLS coming out. That's going to be like, because there are 700 teams, a whole lot of content that you can get both on our YouTube page, or you can download it as a podcast anywhere you find it. So Soccer-Wise HQ on any socials, and join us.
Awesome stuff, Mr. Guest. Thank you so much for joining us today. While you're doing that, and while you're here, subscribe to Morning Kick Around. We are working our way towards 1,000 subscribers. If you've already done so, thank you. And then if you haven't, be the next to subscribe to Morning Kick Around. Follow us on socials at mkickaround, or feel free to donate. Ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. We'll catch our breath and come right back and talk a little bit of NASL here on Morning Kick Around.
Oh.
All right, Friday, American soccer is weird. The trial for the hearts and minds of soccer in America wrapped up last week. The suit went in favor of Major League Soccer and USSF. So kind of just want to ask the question here, what ultimately did the NASL lawsuit accomplish?
Nothing. Lots of people paid lawyers lots of money. Lots of people.
Other than making rich lawyers richer, what did we do?
Nothing came out of this. Nothing came out of this. You know, I covered it a little bit, I think, on Wednesday when you were under the weather, and I tried to get us to have some understanding of what actually this was all about. And when we talked to Stephen Bank, when I interviewed Stephen Bank for the show, you know, he laid it out. He said it as bluntly as I think you can, which is that this was largely about the wealthy people, the powerful people fighting over who gets to be in charge of soccer. Was this really to save the soul of American soccer, Rob? Was this really to pull American soccer from the grubby claws of U.S. soccer and put it back into the hands of the people? I don't know if it ever was in the hands of the people, but was that really what was at stake here? I mean, certainly that's the framing that Rocco Commisso and NASL would like you to believe. They would like you to believe that they were fighting the good fight, that this was right, justified to go after U.S. soccer. And look, in terms of the law, like if we're being narrow about this, forget about the whole, like, is this good for American soccer thing. If we're just being narrow and talking about the law, there was a case here. There was a case here. Yep. I mean, it's not like they just sort of imagined. Yeah, I mean, like, it wouldn't have gotten to a trial if there wasn't grounds for the lawsuit. No, a judge would have thrown it out way before this. Now, a judge did narrow the scope and make it really just about whether or not those PLS standards were misapplied, not whether they were legal in the first place, which is really what NASL wanted to challenge, or Rocco wanted to challenge. He wanted to challenge the idea that MLS and U.S. Soccer got to say anything. And obviously it's U.S. Soccer that's supposed to have some say, but you're not supposed to collude with another business. Don't call them leagues, by the way. For the purposes of the conversation, these are businesses. And this is a fight over businesses. And so I don't think much. We won't be talking about this 10 years from now. It'll be a footnote in American soccer history. Now, the NASL has vowed to appeal. And I said this on Blue Sky. You can follow me at Davis Jason over on Blue Sky. I said that people forget that America's longest running war is the soccer war. Yep. And it won't end. We didn't lay down arms because of this lawsuit. There's no peace happening. We're not signing a treaty on a giant boat or something, which is usually what happens after a war is over. This is going to continue. But I don't know that it's going to gain anything. I don't know if we're going to gain anything from it, right? I don't know that a lawsuit is going to upend American soccer in the way that people who want to see American soccer upended because they dislike the way it's organized, they dislike Major League Soccer, they don't like the fact that we don't have an integrated pyramid with promotion and relegation. A lawsuit's not going to change that.
No, and I liked your comment on Blue Sky. Like, did you really do all these things? Did you put more scrutiny onto soccer leadership? I mean, like you said, there was some basis. They got all the way to trial. It didn't work out. I thought it was odd that the lawyer that probably charged millions of dollars said that there was some legal mistakes made in this, and that's why they could appeal. It seems kind of like Kessler. That kind of seems on him that there was legal mistakes.
No, he's saying that the judge misapplied the law. And that the jury should have had more opportunity to consider other things. And I think that maybe that even includes the narrowing of the scope to the way that PLS was applied rather than the fact that PLS existed in the first place and that the PLS was unfair. Here's the statement that NASL put out after the trial. By the way, unsigned. You can go read this at their website. Unsigned, no name on it, no Rocco, no commissioner of the NASL, which they just named a new one like 2 weeks ago or whatever that was. This is what it says. It said they respect the jury process, they appreciate the time, they believe fundamental legal errors prevented the jury from considering key evidence and applying the correct legal standards. All right, okay, so that is basically saying we think there are grounds for appeal, which everybody appeals. So that's not a surprise. While NASL made out of, this is where it gets really interesting. While NASL may not have achieved the desired verdict at trial, the scrutiny we placed on the leadership of the U.S. Soccer Federation has been a meaningful achievement in and of itself. The attention we helped bring to the management and governance challenges within the Federation contributed to important changes. Here we go. Beginning with a change in leadership in 2018, I will remind everybody that was precipitated largely, or at least the reading most people have, by the fact the U.S. men's national team failed to qualify for the World Cup.
That was a big thing.
That Sunil Gulati Sunil Gulati was basically president for life of U.S. soccer. He had expertly gathered support, curried favor, gotten the right people on his side, so that if he ran again, he was going to win. But maybe he did see that the winds were blowing in a different direction, and he might have lost the next election. But he chose not to run, and that came after U.S. soccer was hit by this massive blow of missing the Men's World Cup. So for the NASL to claim that when they filed their lawsuit in 2017, that somehow led to Sunil Gulati stepping aside seems like a stretch. It also says culminating in U.S. soccer ending its commercial rights partnership with MLS-owned Soccer United Marketing in 2022. I do think there's a possibility that the NASL lawsuit and some of the scrutiny did push U.S. soccer in that direction. How much NASL can claim responsibility for that, I think, is still up in the air. Our efforts to confront U.S. soccer's many conflicts of interest also contributed to broader discussions and progress on key issues, and this is where it gets real nebulous, including equal pay for the U.S. women's national team players and the creation of the USL Super League, a competitive first division soccer league that expands playing opportunities for female athletes. NASL is taking credit for the USL Super League. I'm flabbergasted by that statement, Robert. Flabbergasted.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how those two link entirely, but I mean, just putting an unsigned response and just claiming things were because of you is quite a take. Going back though to Gulati and the lack in 2018 not qualifying, and I don't think really, unless you were way embedded in the United States soccer, those elections for president were not a thing. They, it was like maybe one article like, oh, Gulati got, his sixth term as president or whatever.
Right.
But that was
exactly.
like a whole, more people, dug into the inner workings of how USSF worked after that than any other thing. I'd say that was probably one of the most transformative moments in a generation.
And let's be fair and try to say that a thing can be two things. All right,
True.
To borrow a phrase from a friend of mine and something that I try to say in different ways on occasion. It can be true that NASL's anger, upset, unhappiness with the way the PLS was applied, and hence the lawsuit that they filed in 2017, is especially among a certain group of fans in American soccer, fans who are focused on lower division soccer, for example, fans who are not fans of Major League Soccer, who are anti-MLS. Those fans, those people may have come to that presidential election and changes in leadership and all those things because in part of this lawsuit at NASL, right? And being upset about the way it was handled with NASL. But, most fans were just angry that the U.S. men's national team missed the World Cup. That was the vast majority of American soccer fans who cared at the time and were engaged with what was happening, cared because we missed the World Cup, and that seemed like a disaster. I was doing radio shows around that time, and it was call after call after call about who Gulati has to go, not because MLS and U.S. Soccer colluded to hold back the NASL, but because we missed the World Cup, right? Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, this speaks to a problem that U.S. Soccer has and sort of what it is. We care, most of us, we care about the top level. We care about the U.S. men and the U.S. women's national team and their fortunes in the World Cup and the Olympics for the U.S. women. But U.S. soccer is much more than that, right? They don't just organize the national teams. They do a lot of other things. And I'll bring in Andrew's comment here. Back during the election, Kyle Martino pitched promotion relegation as a cornerstone of his U.S. presidential bid. You know who didn't want it? The players in the states, right? So, again, this is the issue of, like, competing interest within the constituency of U.S. soccer and then NASL is basically saying, look at what we did, and if you were there when it happened, you know that it was mostly just typical fan anger over the failure of a team.
Yeah, an image that I'll never forget is in the press. There's a photo, I think it came out the next day. It was Galati in the presser room, just kind of like in the background during the post game debrief after that loss or that the bad result in Trinidad, and just had his head in his hand and just looked like the most deflated person I can ever remember in a soccer image. That'll stand out for a very, very long time. But back to the NASL lawsuit, just a very serious question. What would you set the over-under on backslaps in Don Garber's office the day that this result came in from the trial?
I get the sense that there were very few of those because they were very confident they were going to win because as came out in the trial. And again, this does not mean there wasn't some sort of collusion. It's just very difficult to sort of prove that. My sense, though, is that they knew how bad NASL had screwed up from an organizational perspective. They knew this was in the bag, right? And so it's not like, hey, look at us, huzzah! I don't think they were saying huzzah. I think they were like, yep, that's what we thought. And some people would say, well, that speaks to hubris and a sense of superiority on the part of Major League Soccer, and you might not be wrong. You might not be wrong.
Yeah, I feel like there was some not even a consideration. I think it was Hunt was saying, like, I didn't even really pay attention to NASL. That was a thing. That was a thing he said. But either
how
way,
disrespectful, right? The difference that what is they say the opposite of love isn't hate, it's ambivalence.
yeah, ambivalence for sure. So we shall see if there's any appeals like that. But the NASL versus MLS and USSF done for now. Thank you, everyone, for tuning into today's show. Be sure to subscribe to the channel. We are working our way towards 1,000 subscribers. Follow on social media at mkickaround. Write us an email, morningkickaround@gmail.com. And be like Mike. Make a donation. Help support Morning Kickaround. Ko-fi.com/morningkickaround. You can donate at any level, one time. Make it a subscription thing. You can do whatever you'd like. So thank you to Mike and whoever may choose to donate. Thank you to David Gass. Great segment. Great to talk MLS with him. And any final notes before we kick on out of here, Mr. Davis?
No. Enjoy your soccer. Again, I would recommend you not commit to a game unless you're a Dortmund fan, for example, until you know what that lineup looks like. You know, Nico could pull the rug out from under us, and we don't want to be spending time wasting our time watching Gio Reyna sit on a bench. Or not watching him, because why would they have a camera on him? He's on the bench.
We look forward to Monday. Hopefully I don't have a giant black eye come Monday. And then my 10-year-old has been he discovered how to make memes, and he's chosen to make some soccer ones. So we'll see if we throw those a little bit in the mix. He's got some funny soccer memes in store for us, perhaps. But anyway, have a great weekend. Enjoy your soccer. Thanks for tuning in. Morning Kick Around. See you next time.